that is something I would think you want to discuss with a hiring manager as opposed to HR/corporate recruiter.
Yeah, well, the hiring manager at the end of the day is the decision maker,
Correct.
right? But they usually don't talk about that until the end of the process.
Right.
The recruiter's up front just to make sure you don't have unrealistic
Well,
expectations.
that's because you're in the business of weeding people out.
Right. I'm in the business of
So
leading
you're-
people.
I'm in the
You're the
position
filter.
of finding something.
Exactly.
Right.
you know,
Exactly.
So it's
Right.
like,
And
I don't want to
also-
outprice myself, but I also don't want to shortchange myself.
Right. So if you have the right skills or you look interesting to them, then you just say, I'm open. I'm open to, a comparable salary and get along, let them interview you, and then once you're at that end of the point, and they want to make an offer to you, then they'll come back and say, well, what kind of, we're looking at making an offer, or, what's your salary expectations? Or what were you currently making? And they will check all that anyway in the
Right.
background check, So, be realistic with yourself. If you have a job and you want to make a change and these people want you and you feel that you shouldn't do it for less than a 15% increase, then tell them that. Tell them, I make 100,000 right now and I really need to make 120 to make this move. Because if they really want you and they've gone through, the longer time they spend on you, the more investment they have. So I hope that people, it usually comes up in the beginning and then it's at the end. But I'll check to make sure you have a visa or work authorization. I'll make sure that you can, when do you want to start? You say, well, I can start in March 2010. I need to know that. All right, any other questions? John?
Does your hiring manager actually set the salaries, or does HR set the salaries?
We, at Nokia, we consult the manager. So there's salary ranges, and, I'll meet with the manager and we'll look at the equity. We want to make sure we're paying someone the right salary. And not, we don't want to be paying someone more for the same job that Qualcomm is. That's just not good business. So. And there's always exceptions. Here you go.
Thanks,
So we
Zach.
can use these to sneak in the back door?
Yeah. Right?
Thanks.
That'd be
Like an
pretty
official
fun.
employee.
We all showed up to the back door of
These
Nokia
are not,
tomorrow.
do not qualify for Nokia badges.
Thanks, Al.
You mentioned visas a few times. Are you having a hard time getting the people with qualified technical skills that have to go international, or?
No, we've had, Nokia, we have 40% of our people have visas. So it's a very, global company.
What? No, it's yours.
And right now, there's still 20,000 visas left of those H1s. They haven't been used yet.
Really?
And last year, they come out April 1st, and they were all done by the end of April. So what is it, September, and we still have 20,000.
These are good hats.
So,
Good to know.
and for the camera person,
Yeah, I was.
Can you, this is just changing
sure.
subjects though. What's your turnover rate right now? It's got to be low, I would say.
It's really low. I think we've had, I want to say maybe 3 people out of 700 leave since January.
As opposed to, voluntary turnover.
That's voluntary, yeah. So we had a restructuring,
That
which
means
we had
layoff.
to do. Yeah, it was a layoff. And when was that? It was this year. God, I don't know, what was that, Jay? Do you remember? Jay's wife works with me, so it had to be maybe in May. And it truly was a restructuring. They weren't letting people go. They really needed different competencies. So we let 50 people go. And then we opened up 38 jobs, right? Because they changed the jobs. And then I hired 7 of the people we let go back, in addition to the 38 jobs. So they were just reshuffling. But in other places in Nokia, there's been clear reductions. Tough time. Even in HR, we've let about 8 people go in the U.S. But it's turning around. I'm telling you, it's turning around.
So, let me ask you something that I got to pull a Nokia hat on before I ask this question. Alice can put it on anyway. I'm just pulling your leg.
My hairy leg?
Yeah. Hairy leg. That was a good name, wasn't it? I made that up. So I preach to get to the hiring manager and to bypass HR. I really like you a lot. I think you're the best inside technical guy, but I would bypass you any day of the week. So if I do that and I get to the hiring manager, what happens inside when I get to the hiring manager?
So if you can get to the hiring manager and convince them, and they come to me and say, this guy Lonnie, I want to interview him, and I'll be like, okay, I have to send him a pre-screening, he has to fill out an application. So, I'm there for the most part to, I have two jobs. One is to weed people out, and then there's the proactive sourcing, the passive sourcing that I do. So I have a couple critical jobs that I'll go on LinkedIn and connect. But with the volume of resumes, my job is to kind of protect the hiring manager. But if you have a hiring manager, it's a friend of yours and he's your neighbor and he says, hey, I have this job, and he comes to me and says, I want to interview this guy.
Or a guy, more
Or gal.
times than not, I didn't know the hiring manager. I would discover them, and then I would call them. Did they say,
They may refer you to to the recruiter. Depends on the manager.
mhm.
So some managers are very proactive in their recruiting. Other managers will wait until 200 people apply and then review the resumes.
So this is a crazy nerdy question, but would you advise people to try to bypass the HR department and get to the hiring manager?
Well, you didn't hear it from me. But,
We're looking for honesty here. That's what
Yeah,
opportunity knocking's about.
yeah, I would say if you could get to the hiring manager, do it. I mean, that's what headhunters do when they try to solicit their business. And, if a manager comes to me and says, hey, I have this candidate, I want to interview them, it's like, okay, we'll put them through the process. But if a manager comes to me and says, I have this candidate and I want to use this headhunter, that's a different story. Because you're talking about, 30 or 60 or $70,000. And yeah, sure. If you guys can get to the hiring manager, do it. And it depends. Like at Nokia, we have one structure. Other companies, the hiring manager is the recruiter. So, but for your really
job's
big
easy.
companies,
So another question for you about, you said tailoring your resume
Mhm.
to the position. A lot of people say, there's two sides. One is tailor your cover letter and have your standard resume, but make sure it touches on everything, or as much as you can. Others say tailor your resume and have a, standard sort of cover letter. Do you ever look at cover letters? You just
I
skip
look
all
at the,
that and
no,
look
I
right at the
really,
resume?
and I don't use, the only cover letters, it's funny, I don't use cover letters, but if I get one of those cover letters that says, your requirement is this and I have this, I read them. Because it's like reading a job description. It's an easy checklist for me to say, okay, is this person even worth looking at? So I personally like them. I do read them.